Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never practice nunchucks in a crowded room. Never eat chole before a road trip. Always take your shirt off before you iron it. Don't take a call near a swimming pool. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
We've all heard and used the expression out of sight, out of mind. Something might be happening, it may be something very important, something very interesting, or something very awful. But if it's far away and if it's not immediately causing me larger pain or giving me larger pleasure for that matter, I tend to ignore it. When I say I, it means for anybody. It can be applied to your personal lives, to your family lives, to the corporates, running of organizations, to the running of this newsroom, to the governance of nations. And that is what we are talking about. Out of sight, out of mind. In fact, my generation, and I know some of you might be from my generation, or a lot of the music is sort of perennial. It carries on from generation to generation. So there was a group called Shocking Blue which had a very popular number, Out of Sight, Out of Mind. And there I remember a line that's part of the refrain. It said, out of sight, out of mind. That's what happened a million times, right? This is the history of our country as well. Things go out of sight, out of mind. That's happened several times. Okay, a million is a poet's license, but it's happened all the time. And most of the time, this applies to the northeastern region of our country. The most distant region for us historically in India has been the northeast of the country. There have been long periods of insurgencies, alienation, underdevelopment, but unless a major attack happens, major insurgent attack happens that hits the headlines, we don't tend to care. And you know what happens? That when this becomes a pattern of attacks, then it becomes like a chronic problem, like a chronic disease. You learn to deal with the chronic disease, you pop your pills, you take your shots, whatever, and you can live with it. That it is very dangerous for a nation to have that approach to a problem just because it's out of sight, out of mind, which seems to be the case with Manipur right now. Manipur trouble had been brewing for some time, but it started in a big way 19 months ago. 19 months ago. That was on May 3, 2023. And since then, there is no let up. There is no let up. As we talk now, there is 288 companies of paramilitary forces, Central Armed Police Forces, that have been sent there. Armed Forces Special Powers Act has been reimposed in 6 police station areas, and this by a BJP government in Delhi, which took pride, quite with justification, on withdrawing AFSPA from areas of the Northeast because they said everything is becoming normal, so why do we need AFSPA? However, this descent into chaos continues. Half of the 37 BJP MLAs themselves, now this is a house of 60, so halfway point is 30, but BJP has 37 MLAs safe, but half of them already have demanded the departure of Chief Minister Biren Singh. In fact, 19 of them jointly wrote a letter to the Speaker demanding that Chief Minister should be changed. At the same time, 7 Kuki MLAs of the BJP legislature party had already distanced themselves from the party. As we know, this is an ethnic conflict between Kukis and Meiteis. We've talked about this in detail in the past. All of the NPP MLAs, NPP is the party of the Sangmas in Meghalaya, they have some presence in Manipur. They have also withdrawn support. They have not withdrawn support from NDA. So they are still part of NDA in Meghalaya, where they have a large majority of their own, but they haven't broken away from NDA, but they have broken away from Biren Singh's government. That's a statement of intent. Biren Singh's government in Manipur asking for a change of chief minister. Then 2 MLAs of Kuki People's Alliance, which were earlier with the BJP, they have also withdrawn. The fact, however, is that in spite of all this, there is nothing to shake Biren Singh because the center has decided that he's their guy and whatever happens, he will continue. So he's continuing on now. What is the state of Manipur? To talk about this, We'll just be joined by our deputy editor Moushumi Gupta, who's just spent some time there, and then she'll do most of the talking. However, I'm just giving you a summary of what's happening in Manipur before Moushumi joins in. So there is a complete ethnic divide. This is the kind of divide you might have seen maybe in the Balkans in really bad days, right? When Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, was breaking up. So Christian groups going to one side, Muslim groups going to one side, and terrible things being done by one group to the other. Now, fortunately, killings of those kinds have been averted in Manipur, although lots of killings have taken place and atrocities. You've seen those videos, pictures, even recently, those videos and pictures of women who had been raped and paraded naked. Those were there, the victims were Kuki. Recently, the 6 people who were kidnapped, including very small baby whose bodies were later found, and now autopsy shows those were found with bullet wounds in their heads and smashed skulls. Terrible. They are Metis, but on either side people were Indians. This is Indians doing this stuff to Indians. About 6,000 weapons have been looted all across the state, although a large number of them are in Imphal Valley. And Arambai Tengol is now a very strong, it's described as a socio-cultural organization of the Metis. Besides that, however, there are about 23 armed insurgent organizations in the valley. Across the state, at this point, there is at least 72 identifiable insurgent or underground organizations, most of them armed. So 72 across the state, of which 23 are in Imphal Valley. You would make a presumption, but also reports from the ground are, and that's what our correspondents bring, and that's what Moushumi also brings, that most of these were looted by Metis. The answer to that is, the counter to that is, that Kukis already had weapons which they had procured from Myanmar, and many of those weapons are with Kukis in safe custody in what is called as suspension of operation camps in Manipur. So they are sitting in their camps, and Metis say they get out of their camps carrying these weapons. So to counter them, the Metis community also needs its own weapons. Then the Metis now, just as the Kukis have their insurgent organizations, Metis also have an organization called Arambai Tengol. Moushumi will explain to you exactly what it means. And these Arambai Tengol people, it's basically a youth organization of the Metis. They've been threatening MLAs. They have an office or a center in every assembly's constituency in Imphal Valley. They are even asking the MLAs to donate to buy guns and to get food for themselves. One day they summoned all the MLAs to Kangla Fort, right? It's like the governor summoning the MLAs, or speaker summoning the MLAs, or the legislature party chief summoning the MLAs. Moushumi will tell us more about it. Extortion is rampant. The police says that there is 269% rise, and this is when cases are reported. You would presume that many cases are not reported, because people will think that discretion is the better part of valor. Economy is broken. Salary payments are delayed by 10-15 days every month. The state, by the way, has 147,000 employees, which over a small population base of just over 3 million is a lot of people. There are also pension arrears piled up to 800 crores. So it is that pile of disaster that Manipur is now. So once again, I know it's out of sight, out of mind. You haven't seen it in your headlines for a long time. You haven't seen it in your TV discussions most of the time. That is, in fact, even more reason that the print should focus on it, because the Northeast is as much a part of the country as New Delhi. And you know what happens? Even a human body starts withering or starts rotting from its most distant part, because it's when the blood supply stops or slows down to the most distant part of a human body, that the decay starts, and sometimes it becomes irreversible. And that's the reason we are constantly there in Manipur. And Moushumi, who's just come back and she's done a series of stories, we'll talk about the stories as we go along. But I will now request Moushumi to join us in the discussion. Moushumi, you've just come back from Manipur. You've been there before. What has changed and what has not changed? Give us the ground picture.
So I went there last May, just a week after the violence
The
had.
first time.
Yeah, the first time, May 9, 2023, we landed in Imphal, and that was just the second week after the ethnic clashes broke out. So at that point of time when we were there, uh, you know, because the violence had just erupted, so curfew was imposed in the city. Normal life was disturbed, not only in the valley but in the hills also. And the segregation of the two communities had just started. All the Kukis were fleeing Manipur, fleeing Imphal from the valley to the hills, and those who could afford it, they were moving out of Manipur. And vice versa, the Metis, who are predominantly Hindus, were moving from the hills to the
So
valley.
there was an exchange of population.
There was an exchange of population out of fear. Even the army was assisting them, because in the valley, the armed groups, underground groups comprising Methi youth, they were targeting the tribal Kuki population.
And vice versa.
And vice
Tribal-
versa, in the hills, the tribal Kuki population were targeting the Methi community. So, I mean, they were, there was an exchange of population.
So the army was escorting these groups for their safety.
Yeah, they were escorting them for safety. And also what we found at that time, I mean, we spoke to stakeholders across sections, was at that time, I mean, all of them said that, Biren Singh, I mean, as chief minister, they looked at him as a savior of the Metis. This is in Imphal Valley. So that was the predominant phenomena back then in the initial days. However, when we went this time around, across the valley, also across sections, civilians, you speak to the people in the government, the political establishment. So there is this feeling that, the chief minister should go, Biren Singh should be removed, because as long as he is there, no dialogue is possible, because the Kukis have made it very clear. There are 7 Kuki MLAs in the government. They are from the BJP, and the Kukis have made it very clear that as long as he is there as chief minister, they won't come on the table and talk. And also, the common man I mean, because they've been suffering for so long, normal life has been affected. Schools are closed, colleges open now and then, but then there is again a renewed violence, and then it's shut down. Internet is shut down most of the time. So they are fed up, and they say that maybe it's time for change. A new leadership comes in, and there will be some kind of some kind of normalcy back again in the state.
So what will happen? What will happen? Suppose Biren Singh is changed. What will change just because there is a change of chief minister?
So what they're saying is that, and this includes some of the BJP MLAs who have, written to the Prime Minister demanding his removal and restoration of normalcy. They say that the first thing that happens when he's moved out is that the dialogue process starts, because unless and until the Kukis come on the same table with the Metis, they can't talk of any kind of integration. And if we want a status quo, what existed before May 3rd, 2023, where both the Metis and the Kukis live together, it's very important that, there has to be a dialogue with both sides on the table, and then they can take it forward.
So there is a bunch of stories that Moushumi has done from a recent visit. I am reading the headlines for you, and the stories will also, the top pages will run on your screens as I read the headlines. We'll share the links. You can see all of these. So the first is how arms looted in Manipur are sold beyond the valley now, across the border, and recovery is a struggle for security forces. Number 2, hushed voices, shutters down, Manipur conflict has turned bustling trade hub More. More is a border town between India and Myanmar. More into a ghost town. Third, on how BJP is a divided house in Manipur. And the fourth, that even RSS office in BJP ruled state, that's Manipur, is not scared. And BJP and Manipur MLAs and Sangh workers all live in fear. So explain the last story once. Is RSS office not spared, and Manipur MLAs and RSS workers all living in fear.
So all these MLAs and I mean, most of them are from the ruling BJP only. So even when a section of them have written a letter to the Prime Minister demanding the Chief Minister's removal, but when you go and talk to them, nobody is willing to come out in the open. Uh, I spoke to, about half a dozen MLAs, and they say that, the moment we speak out, the moment we dissent, we are afraid that one of these underground groups would come at our door to threat us. And there have been instances. So they cited instances like there was this minister who had, in one of the meetings with the CM, told him that he should step down. And then a couple of days later, a bunch of armed men came to his house, which had, there were security personnel there. So they landed, about over 2 dozen of them landed at his house at 11:30 in the night to threaten him. They had to beat a hasty retreat when the police came. Similarly, there was another MLA who was one of the signatories, one of the 19 MLAs who had written to the Prime Minister. So he was at that point of time in Delhi. This is last month only. So one of his close aides who was in the valley. So one night, a bunch of armed men, not a bunch, even over 2 dozen armed men with wielding sophisticated weapons landed up looking for him. So that was kind of a threat that, you had written to the Prime Minister. And I mean, it was seen as a kind of a threat. So they are saying that there are umpteen instances like this where even the elected representatives are terrified to speak out. So one of them said that, have you seen something like this in any part of India where even the elected MLAs are afraid to speak out, afraid to talk? So that is the kind of fear, that is the kind of terror that, not only the civilians, even the elected representatives are living in Manipur. And what happened on November 16th and 17th, when, houses of over a dozen MLAs, which included ministers as well, were vandalized. On November 17th, the RSS Prakhand office in Harauruk, this is some 15 kilometers from Imphal. So a mob of some 150 people went inside, they stormed inside, and they damaged the furniture there, they damaged the property there. So even the RSS guys, the BJP guys are saying that, if an RSS office is also not safe, I mean, we work for the society. So why would somebody come and attack us?
And RSS has been there for a long time, and they've been working on the ground, deep down, very hard, and they are very well spread out. So for them to, and they must have a good sense of what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, and RSS has been talking about, the need to restore normalcy in Manipur since the last, several months.
That's right. Even the RSS chief, even in his Dashera address, talked about this in detail. Then you've said that arms looted in Manipur are sold not just in the valley but beyond the valley, across the border also. What's going on? Is there now a flourishing arms trade of looted weapons?
Yeah, kind of. Security agencies say that of the 6,000 weapons that were stolen, and this is from across the state, both the hills and the valley, so predominantly from the valley. So they say that while they have managed to recover around 3,000 weapons, but then there are some 3,000 weapons, including Insas rifle, which is not traceable. As in, they don't know where it is, and they have got information that many of these weapons, and there have been instances so where these weapons have been sold to Methi Pangals. Methi Pangals are the Muslims, and the Nagas, who have in turn sold it to somebody else. So in fact, there was a encounter on the More border, Indo-Myanmar border. So there was this valley-based insurgent group member who was caught, and who was on the other side, on the Myanmar side, who was handed over to the BSF Jawan on this side by the villagers, who they found an Insas rifle on him. So that's what makes them think that now these weapons have gone, outside the state as well, not only outside the valley, but outside the, outside the country as well, to the other side, to the Myanmar side, and which is far more dangerous.
So Methi Pangals are the Muslims among the Methis. That community is called Pangals. That's about 9% of all the Methi community.
Right.
Just about 9%.
Right.
And they don't fully identify with the larger Methi Hindu cause, or do they seek protection? What happens with them?
No.
Where do they feature in this argument?
So Methi Pangas basically are, right now they are neutral.
Right.
So for instance, the first time when we went there, so we wanted to go to Churachandpur, but our driver who was a Methi, he refused to go because he said that if I
Too
go, I'll be
dangerous.
killed. But if you have a Methi Pangal driver, so he is seen as a neutral person who is not touched by the cookies also, so you can go around. So that's why now most of, whatever movement, transport movement is happening, you will see a Methi Pangal driver, going from the valley to the hills.
You also talk about a flourishing illegal trade and drugs, guns. Yes, those are well known. In fact, drugs, if anything, have increased. But you also timber also is well known. But you mentioned betel nut. Now, supari. Now, how big an economy is betel nut?
So the security agencies say that betel nut now is number one in the trade list in terms of the volume of the trade. Those since the conflict has broken out, there has been reduction. In fact, some kind of a reduction. Earlier, what used to happen was that most of these were traded at the More, illegally traded into India from the More border, because it's a porous border, 398 kilometers. So betel nut, timber, drugs. But because of the conflict, what happened is that for this trade to go on seamlessly, the cookies and metis had to work together. But that has broken down because of this ethnic conflict, and that's why now some part of that trade has moved from Manipur to Mizoram side.
And also, it has moved from legal to illegal.
Legal to illegal, yes. So earlier, because they had allowed this cross-border trade at More in 2018, so even that has been stopped. So now it has, most of it is illegal.
And that's the reason we say More has now become like a ghost town. Used to be a bustling town.
Yeah.
Now, the other interesting thing here is that that Mizoram government, Mizoram Chief Minister, and also the Mizoram opposition party, MNF, which is a prominent party, was in power until then. They've also all taken strong positions on the Manipur conflict. So, will you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Mizoram, many of these people, the Metis as well as the Kukis, so they have post the violence, they had moved to Mizoram for safety. Also, we have to remember that Mizoram has a large number of, it's a Christian majority state. And the Mizoram chief minister, he had gone to New York last month, where he had spoken about how the Kuki, Zo, Chin community living in, India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar need to, come together, and they need to,
because there is tribal kinship.
Yeah, tribal kinship. So that is also brewing up, and that's one of the reasons that the Mizoram government has opposed this border fencing that's going on. Union Home Minister Amit Shah had announced sometime in March this year that some 1,600 kilometers of border between India and Myanmar would be fenced, and it has been opposed by both Mizoram and Nagaland. Mizoram, because they say that they have their own people on the other side of the border, so they have come out in the open opposing this.
So as the crisis festers, it's leading to more and more complications.
Yes.
Lawlessness, insurgency, ethnic divide, conflict on the border, Myanmar, getting caught up, intermixed with the conflict going on in Myanmar, gun running, smuggling, and now this cross-national conflict and tension as well. So that's what happens when a crisis is allowed to fester for too long. That's where, Moushumi, the religious angle also comes in, because most of the tribals are Christian, and particularly the Kuki tribals, or what is called as Zomi tribal group, or Kuki group, Mizo groups and Kuki groups. These are all Christian, and many from sort of similar sort of denominations as well. Mm-hmm. And that is the case across the border in Myanmar too.
So that's how the Mizoram politicians, including the chief minister, have responded to this.
Yeah, so that's what happens when you let a serious problem become chronic, it festers, then it causes complications, and those complications can reach distant parts of the body or distant parts of a nation, because a nation can't say this is an area that I can quarantine. No nation can quarantine an area. In this case, the response so far has been, instead of addressing the basic problem, the leadership problem, the center is just sending more and more companies of central armed forces. That's a bit like not diagnosing a really serious fever and pain, but thinking that I can make the patient swallow more and more paracetamol and fever will go down. It doesn't go down because the root cause is
Has
not
not been
addressed. So this becomes a case of dard badta gaya, juju dawa ki. As you gave more treatment, more drugs, the pain actually kept on rising. That, unfortunately, is the story of Manipur right now. And Moushumi, thank you very much for spending so much time there, because I know for a reporter it is a tough travel. It's a tough travel, not just for logistics and how you travel and stay, but also in terms of the pain and an unfolding tragedy that you watch within your own country.
The sad part is that across sections in Manipur, I mean, you speak to the Metis, you speak to the Kukis, you speak to the politicians, you speak to security establishment, government officials, all of them are saying that why has the situation been allowed to linger on for so long? Why has the central government not been able to restore normalcy in the state? Because they say the more it's allowed to linger, the divide will grow deeper, and it can reach a point of no return, which will not only be dangerous for a small state like Manipur, but for the entire country as a whole.
Well, I do hope, Moushumi, and you will join me in hoping this, that we will not reach that situation, that at some point there will be substantive action that is urgently needed in Manipur. And that's why it's important that we don't forget it. And that's why it is important for us to remember that the dangers, the perils of that out of sight, out of mind syndrome.